In today's crazy competitive business world, everybody's always looking for that edge. And predicting what's next is practically a superpower,
Hmm.
right? Like, imagine knowing what your customers want before they even do. That's the power of demand forecasting, and that's what we're diving deep into today.
Yeah, it's really fascinating how it's evolved.
And how data analytics is taking it from guesswork to something much closer to a science.
Exactly.
I mean, think about it.
It used to be all spreadsheets and gut feelings, like just looking at the past data,
Right, just kind of like making educated guesses.
educated guesses. But now we're talking about like serious predictive models that analyze massive data sets. And they learn from each new piece of information that comes in.
We've got this great article here from Procure4 Marketing called Data Analytics and Demand Forecasting. And it really lays out this whole transformation. So we're not just talking about businesses suddenly becoming fortune tellers, are we?
Not quite fortune tellers. But we're getting closer, you know. It's all about this thing called predictive analytics. Okay, so picture this. Your model is predicting holiday sales. At first, it might be off by, say, like 10%.
Yeah.
But as it learns from each year's data, it can get to be accurate to within like 2%.
Wow.
So it's like having a crystal ball that gets clearer with every use.
That's amazing. But it seems like just relying on past data would have some limitations.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Like, what about those sudden shifts in the market? Like, say, a heat wave hits, and suddenly everybody's rushing to buy air conditioners. You know your past data is not going to tell you that.
Exactly. That's where real-time data comes into play.
Okay.
So modern forecasting isn't just about looking back. It's about having your finger on the pulse of what's happening right now. It's like a constant stream of information feeding into that model, allowing it to adapt on the fly.
So where is this real-time data even coming from? Is it just like social media trends or something?
No, it's much broader than that. We're talking point-of-sale systems, online transactions, even data from all those internet-connected devices, like, you know, the Internet of Things. So all of this together creates like this really dynamic picture of what's happening in the market, you know, allowing businesses to respond to those sudden shifts in demand.
Right, like that air conditioner rush during a heat wave.
Exactly, or even supply chain disruptions, you know?
So it's like having a live feed of what's happening,
Yeah,
constantly updating those predictions.
constantly updating.
That's incredible. Now, our article also mentions something called external factors. So it's not just about a company's own internal data.
Right. Data analytics goes beyond just what's happening inside a company's walls, so it considers external factors that might influence demand.
Like, what kind of things are we talking about?
Things like economic indicators, market trends, even insights into like consumer behavior, all that stuff.
Hold on. So we're saying that data can actually predict how changes in the economy or even like social trends will impact what people want to buy.
Yeah.
That's some next level stuff.
It is, because demand doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? It's influenced by this whole web of interconnected factors. And data analytics is helping us untangle those connections and make some surprisingly accurate predictions.
Can you give me an example, like a real world example?
Sure, imagine a company that sells ice cream. Using data analytics, they might find that ice cream sales go way up when the temperature rises.
Yeah, makes sense.
Right, so that simple insight can then be used to adjust their inventory levels and their marketing campaigns.
Wow, my mind is officially blown.
Yeah.
But okay, so how does all this magic actually work? What's the tech behind these predictions?
Yeah, so the article talks about big data technologies like Hadoop and Spark,
Okay.
which are specifically designed to handle these massive amounts of data. So think of Hadoop like a gigantic data warehouse. It can store everything you know from sales transactions to social media posts, and it can find like these hidden connections that traditional systems would just completely miss. And then you have Spark, which is known for its speed. So it's perfect for real-time analysis, you know, keeping up with everything as it happens.
So you don't have to be like a tech giant with supercomputers to actually use these tools.
Not anymore. Cloud computing has really leveled the playing field. So these powerful tools are accessible to businesses of all sizes now.
That's great.
And then there are the machine learning techniques themselves, like time series analysis, which looks for trends and seasonality in data that's been collected over time.
Okay.
Like, for example, if a company sees a spike in swimwear sales every summer, time series analysis can help them anticipate that demand and stock up accordingly.
So it's not just collecting data. It's about teaching machines to actually understand it
Yeah, to understand.
and make predictions based on it. This is starting to feel like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. But surely there must be some challenges with all of this.
Oh, there are definitely challenges. One of the biggest ones is data quality and management. You see, even the most sophisticated model is only as good as the data that it's fed. It's like they say garbage in, garbage out.
Makes sense.
Hmm.
So what can companies do to make sure that their data is top-notch?
Well, they need to invest in systems to clean and manage the data from all these different sources, making sure it's accurate, consistent, and formatted correctly.
It sounds like a lot of work.
It can be, but it's essential. And they also need to think about integrating this new technology with their existing systems,
Hmm.
which can be tricky sometimes.
Yeah, I bet. And I imagine finding people who can handle all this data is another challenge. You can't just buy the software and expect it to work magic, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The article really emphasizes the need for skilled personnel. Data analysts, data scientists, people who speak the language of data. These are the folks who can translate all those numbers and insights into actual business strategies.
So it's not just about the technology. It's about having the right people to wield it effectively. This is fascinating stuff. But before we get too lost in the present, let's take a peek into the future. What does the road ahead look like for data analytics in demand forecasting?
This is where it gets really exciting. The article points to all these advancements in artificial intelligence, even greater integration of real-time data from the Internet of Things, and even the potential of augmented and virtual reality to completely change how we interact with data.
Augmented reality. Wow. So imagine being able to step into a virtual representation of your data and see patterns emerge right before your eyes. That's mind-blowing. Well, we've covered a lot of ground here today, from the evolution of demand forecasting to the power of predictive analytics and the importance of real-time data. But we've only just scratched the surface. So join us in part 2, where we'll delve even deeper into the technologies and techniques that are driving this revolution in demand forecasting. Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of data analytics and demand forecasting. We've explored the power of predictive analytics, the importance of real-time data, and we even got a glimpse into the future. So now let's roll up our sleeves and take a closer look at those specific technologies and techniques, the ones that are making all of this possible.
It's like opening up the hood and seeing the engine that drives this data revolution. Last time we were talking about big data technologies like Hadoop and Spark. To really understand them, you got to grasp the sheer volume, the variety, and the velocity of the data that modern businesses are generating.
The 3V?
The 3 Vs, exactly. So Hadoop is like this massive data warehouse. It's a framework that can store everything from sales transactions to social media trends, and it's all processed across these clusters of computers, which allows you to find hidden connections that traditional systems would just completely miss.
So it's like having a whole team of supercomputers working together to analyze all this data and uncovering insights that would otherwise remain hidden.
That's a great way to put it. And then we have Spark, which is known for its speed and its efficiency, which makes it perfect for real-time data analysis, which, as we discussed, is crucial for staying ahead of the curve in demand forecasting.
So we've got these powerful platforms that are handling all this data, but how do we actually make sense of it all? What are the machine learning techniques that come into play here?
This is where things get really interesting. One technique that's used a lot in demand forecasting is called time series analysis. As the name suggests, it focuses on analyzing data points that have been collected over time to identify trends, seasonality, and other patterns. So think about it like understanding how a company's sales of winter coats spike every year as the temperature drops.
Right, because it's cold.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So if a company sees that recurring pattern, time series analysis can help them anticipate that demand and make sure they have enough coats in stock before that first snowflake falls.
Exactly. By recognizing these recurring patterns, businesses can make much more accurate predictions about future demand. Another powerful technique is regression analysis. This helps us understand the relationship between different variables and how they might influence demand.
Okay, can you give me a real-world example of that?
Sure, imagine a company that sells ice cream. Using regression analysis, they might discover that there's a strong correlation between ice cream sales and the temperature outside.
Okay.
The hotter it gets, the more ice cream people buy. So this insight can then be used to refine their demand forecasts and optimize their inventory levels so they don't run out on a scorching summer day.
So it's not just about looking at past sales data in isolation. It's
Oh, yeah.
about understanding all those factors that actually drive those sales
Right.
and using that knowledge to make smarter predictions. It's really cool. But we also talked about the challenges of data quality and management. Can we dig a little deeper into that?
Absolutely, because even the most sophisticated machine learning models are only as good as the data that they're fed. If the data is inaccurate, incomplete, or inconsistent, the results are going to be unreliable.
So garbage in, garbage out, as they say.
Precisely. That's why data quality and management are absolutely critical. Businesses need to invest in robust systems and processes to make sure that the data they're using is accurate, clean, and properly formatted.
So what are some of the things that companies can actually do to improve their data quality?
Well, there are several key steps involved. First, you need to establish clear data governance policies and procedures. This includes things like defining data standards, establishing data ownership, and outlining data validation processes. Think of it like creating a rule book for how data is handled throughout the organization so that everybody's on the same page.
Right, you've got to have the rules of the road.
Exactly.
And then you also need to invest in data cleansing tools and techniques to identify and correct any errors, inconsistencies, or duplicates in your data. So that might involve standardizing data formats, filling in any missing values, and removing any irrelevant or redundant data.
You got it. It can be a pretty involved process, but it's essential for ensuring the reliability of your data analysis. And finally, you need to make sure that your data is properly integrated across all of your systems and applications. And this can be a major challenge, especially for companies with legacy systems that weren't designed with data analytics in mind.
So it's not just about having the right tools, it's about having the right processes and infrastructure in place to support them. That makes a lot of sense. Now, we also touched upon the need for skilled personnel in this field. Can you elaborate on that a bit more?
Sure, as powerful as these technologies are, they're not much use without people who know how to leverage them effectively. We're talking about data analysts, data scientists, machine learning engineers, professionals who understand how to extract insights from data and then translate them into actionable business strategies. They're the interpreters of the data, turning raw numbers into valuable knowledge.
So it's not enough to just buy the software. You need to have the right people in place to actually use it.
Exactly, and finding and retaining those skilled individuals can be a real challenge. The demand for data professionals is incredibly high, and the talent pool is limited. It's a competitive field.
So what are some of the skills that companies should be looking for when they're hiring for these roles?
Well, obviously, strong analytical and problem-solving skills are essential, but you also need people who are proficient in various programming languages like Python and R, which are commonly used in data analysis. Think of them as the tools that allow data professionals to communicate with and manipulate data effectively.
So the combination of technical skills and analytical thinking, almost like being a detective, but for data.
Exactly. And don't forget about domain expertise. It's also helpful to have people on your team who understand the specific industry or business function that you're operating in. For example, someone with a background in retail would be a valuable asset to a company that's trying to forecast demand for consumer goods.
Because they'd have insights into consumer behavior,
Exactly.
market trends, all those factors that can influence demand.
Absolutely.
It's all starting to come together now. The data, the technology, and the people who can make sense of it all.
It's all connected. And that brings us to the crucial question. How can businesses take all of this knowledge and turn it into action? How can they implement data-driven demand forecasting and really reap the benefits? That's what we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive. We'll look at the practical steps businesses can take, the potential pitfalls to avoid, and the really exciting possibilities that lie ahead. So stay tuned.
All right, so welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into data analytics and demand forecasting. We've unpacked the technology, the techniques, and even some of those challenges along the way. But now let's get practical. What are the actual steps businesses can take to implement all this and start reaping the benefits?
Well, it's a journey. It's a journey that requires careful planning, execution, and ongoing adaptation. You can't just flip a switch and suddenly become a data-driven forecasting powerhouse.
So where do we even begin? What's like the first step on this journey?
I'd say the most important first step is to define clear objectives. Like, what are you actually hoping to achieve with data-driven demand forecasting?
All right, we're trying to reduce inventory costs, improve customer service, or maybe gain a competitive edge. There's a lot of possibilities.
There are a lot of possibilities. It's like setting a destination before you start a trip. Yeah. You got to know where you're going.
Okay, so we've got our goals in mind. Now what's next?
Next, you need to assess your current data landscape. So what data do you already have? What data are you missing? And how can you ensure its quality and accessibility? This is often where companies hit a roadblock, because data can be messy, scattered across different systems, and sometimes of questionable quality, frankly.
It's like trying to build a house with a pile of mismatched bricks and tools scattered all over the place. Got to sort things out first before you can start building right.
Exactly. You might need to invest in data cleansing and integration tools like we talked about earlier. But it's an investment worth making because without reliable data, your forecasting efforts are going to be compromised.
So let's say we've got our objectives, we've assessed our data, we've cleaned things up a bit. What's the next step?
Okay, so now it's time to start exploring the technology landscape. There's a whole plethora of tools and platforms available out there, each with its own strengths and weaknesses. You'll need to consider things like your budget, your technical expertise, and the specific needs of your business, obviously.
Sounds like there's a risk of getting overwhelmed with all the options.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Are there any common pitfalls that businesses should watch out for during this implementation phase?
One common mistake is trying to do too much too soon. It's tempting to jump in and try to implement the most sophisticated solutions right out of the gate, but that can actually backfire. It's usually better to start small, maybe focus on one specific area or problem that you're trying to solve, and then gradually expand your capabilities as you gain experience and confidence.
So it's like learning to walk before you try to run a marathon, right?
That's a great analogy.
Start with a pilot project, learn from it, and then gradually expand.
Exactly. Another pitfall is underestimating the importance of change management, because implementing data-driven forecasting isn't just about the technology, it's about the people too.
You need to get everybody on board, make sure they understand the benefits
Yeah.
and how those new processes are going to work.
Yeah, it's definitely a team effort.
Definitely a team effort.
So training and communication are absolutely crucial throughout that whole implementation process. And finally, don't forget about ongoing monitoring and evaluation. The world of data analytics is constantly evolving. So you got to be prepared to adapt and refine your approach over time.
So it's a continuous journey, not a one-time project.
It is.
Makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the practical steps, but I'm curious, what are some of the really exciting possibilities that data-driven demand forecasting can unlock? What's like the big picture here?
The potential is truly transformative. Imagine a world where businesses can anticipate market shifts with incredible accuracy. They can optimize their operations for maximum efficiency and deliver products and services that perfectly meet customer needs.
It sounds like this utopian vision of a perfectly synchronized supply chain, where everything runs smoothly and there are no surprises.
Yeah, and it's not just about efficiency and cost savings either. It's also about creating a more sustainable and resilient supply chain. So by reducing waste and optimizing resource allocation, businesses can actually minimize their environmental impact and better withstand disruptions.
So it's not just good for business, it's good for the planet too.
Exactly. It's a win-win.
That's a win-win for sure. And it sounds like we're just at the beginning of this data-driven revolution.
Absolutely. Like we discussed earlier, we're just scratching the surface of what's possible. Advancements in artificial intelligence, real-time data integration, and these immersive technologies like augmented reality are going to continue to push those boundaries.
It's an exciting time to be in this field, that's for sure. So as we wrap up our deep dive, what's the one key message you want our listeners to take away from all of this?
Data analytics is no longer a luxury, it's a necessity. The businesses that embrace its power are going to be the ones that thrive in the years to come.
Well said. And for our listeners out there, we encourage you to start exploring the world of data analytics and see how it can transform your own work and your own industry. This deep dive has really just scratched the surface of this vast and rapidly evolving field. But we're confident that the more you learn, the more excited you'll become about all those possibilities. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.